was just growing up knowing that, okay, your sister is different. It wasn't necessarily explained to me from an early age.
Hello and welcome. This is Special Mums Africa, the podcast. This is real talk on special needs parenting, and today we are talking about siblings. My name is Yemisi Taiwo. I will be your lead host today, and we have some very amazing hosts in the studio with me today. And of course, as you've met her before, most definitely, it is Tonya Faluki Ekezie.
What up, what up, what up?
And of course, joining us today is Obafe Kemi Luther. And of course, our very, very, very special guest in the studio today, the beautiful, the eclectic, the amazing actor, Michelle Dede.
Hello. Thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Well, thank you for being here with us today.
I was just expecting to see Michelle Dede. Okay.
All right. Okay. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background about myself. My name is Yemisi Taiwo. I'm usually known as Missy Molu. I work mainly in media, where I started off as a radio presenter and then, you know, amongst other things, TV host, and now budding actor. We're trying to get out there.
Budding.
Don't mind her.
Oh, Michelle Dede, go.
She's like budding.
I'm budding.
Baker.
Oh, yes. Let's not forget that. I'm a baker as well. You know, I make some very,
ever.
very, very delicious treats. I should have
Do
brought
you?
some today.
Yes, she does.
Okay,
I'm so sorry. And I had, oh man, I'm so sorry.
Amazing brownie.
Okay.
Oh, brown.
Come on.
All right. So, and then most especially my most important job or my most important gift that I've been given is the gift of being a mother to two amazing boys. And my very first child was my special needs baby, my special needs gift from God, basically. So we are here today, basically, to talk about the experience of being a sibling to a special needs child, basically growing up and just the experience of it all, basically. But let me hand you over to Tonya, who's going to introduce us properly to what we're talking about today, seeing that she's the expert, you know.
I don't know about that, you know. But this topic is very popular. We've noticed on Simone's Oasis that it's a very popular topic. And so I really wanted to make sure we addressed it early in this new podcast. And I just want to thank Michelle for being here and sharing with us, or she's about to share with us. Now, the idea is that the siblings' experience is very different from the parents' experience, and you're all part of the same family. So it's really important for parents in general, but especially because we're talking about special needs parenting, for us to really look about the dynamic between siblings, because the sibling is not just the sibling of their special needs, brother or sister. They also have an additional responsibility that their neurotypical friends may not have. You have to kind of be constantly looking out for that sibling. You have a role of like an overseer, a carer. And how does that work within the family dynamic? So that's what we're really taking a look at. And yeah, so we're glad Michelle is here.
I'm actually glad we're talking about this because I brought a notebook. The reason why I brought a notebook, no, don't look at me like that. They just all rolled their eyes like, what are you doing?
I didn't roll my eyes. I was like, I'm not an expert. So.
No, not you. Tonya and Faye just looked at each other like, oh God, what's she doing? The reason why is because, Tonya, right after your sort of like explanation for what we're doing right now, I just thought to myself, whatever Michelle has to say that she and Najite have been through is very important for me because I worry about Micah.
Okay.
So I'm always trying to figure out what's going on with him if I'm not paying enough attention to him. Does he feel left out because I'm doing this? Or, you know, things, just notes, basically, pointers, I think is very important.
So why don't we get started in terms of, you know, what happened growing up? How was the family dynamic growing up?
Because of what you've just mentioned, what Yemisi's just mentioned now, I wish we had actually, and you had invited Najite, because her experience obviously would have been very different from mine because she's older than I am and probably closer in age to Mickey, so her experience would have been different from mine. I can't say that I really was aware of the fact that my sister had a special need until I was probably in my mid-teens.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay, maybe early teens. Not
What's her
mid-teens.
diagnosis?
Honestly, initially, I didn't know. So it was just growing up knowing that, okay, your sister is different. It wasn't necessarily explained to me from an early age because I'm the youngest from my mother, and there's quite a gap between myself and my older siblings. So I knew she was different, but didn't really understand what exactly it was. And I suppose that my father probably didn't explain to me because I was too young to understand. But from the age of about, I would say 12, 13, I then started asking questions. So growing up, it was just, Mickey doesn't speak. So from my understanding, it was my sister is mute. She just doesn't speak. She wasn't born that way because she actually started speaking before my elder brother did. And then apparently stopped. And it was very sudden.
That's a telltale sign right there.
Yes, it was very sudden. So, and I remember asking my brother about it, and then he said, oh, well, she actually was speaking before I was, and, you know, we would have conversations, and then I think from the age about 4 or something, he said she stopped speaking. So for me, I always thought that perhaps what had led to it was some sort of trauma from my parents' relationship coming to an end because they separated quite early on and, you know, later divorced. So I thought that probably was a factor. So when we had moved to, it was Ethiopia, yes, when we had moved to Ethiopia, because obviously the services for children with disabilities or young adults with disabilities was very different than in the other countries we had lived in Australia and in Brazil. That was when I started asking questions. That was when, as I got older, because you're now making friends with other teenagers who are asking you questions. Why does your sister not speak?
Yeah.
And you didn't have the answers.
You don't have the answers because you're young, you're not aware. And because, thankfully, because I was an inquisitive child, I then started asking my father, but...
So what was the kind of response, right?
It was always, your sister doesn't speak, your sister doesn't speak. I don't know why he didn't say, you know, she's autistic. It was probably much later, as when I was probably about 15, 16, that I said, you know, what exactly is the situation? And at that point he said, your sister has autism. And I was like, well, what is that? And he said, you know, we'll read up about it and, you know, we'll learn about it. But one of the things for me that I think that was very important, and something that, you know, Yemisi had mentioned because she's worried about her other child, is the fact that my father always reminded us or instilled in us that you're not better and she's not less than.
Yes.
So I was always aware of that, and even though I was younger and not, you know, you're not really aware of a lot of things that's going on and you're going through your teenage years and you're discovering yourself and discovering everything else. One of the things that really stood out for me was the fact that he always said that. So if my friends were awkward towards her, yes, I did feel out of place at times, but it made me very defensive.
Yes.
Or very protective rather, not defensive, very protective. So even though she was so much older, if they weren't accepting of her, you and I probably were not going to be friends. And I was an extremely shy and timid child.
Really?
And teenager. Yes. Even he's shocked that I do what I do for a living now and that I even speak the way I do. I was very shy, very timid.
Do you think it's because of that dynamic in the house or
not at all.
seeing that happen?
Not at all. It had nothing to do with her. It just purely was because I was, I guess the last point, I was very different from the other siblings.
Do you think it made you stronger? You being, like, your emotions were stronger because you're that shy. So for you, if you're shy, for you to then express yourself, is it something that's more...
That developed, that's a whole nother podcast. That's a whole nother podcast. That developed as I got older, to be honest with you. Because even when I first met you in 2006...
Big brother.
I mean, forget how I may have appeared. I was extremely nervous, extremely awkward, extremely shy. My sister literally had to...
people like me hope.
My sister literally had to force me out of that into social situations when I moved here in 2010. But when I first met you in 2006, I was awkward as heck and extremely uncomfortable just even being here and meeting new people.
But you said something.
But it had nothing to... Sorry, don't go off topic. It had nothing to do with, with my
I was
sister
going to ask
Mickey,
you what
to be
you
honest.
just said about being protective of your sister, and that if people weren't accepting of her, that would be the end of it, which is something that I'm looking at. It's sort of, for me, it's like it gave you also a voice, because you were always taught that there was nothing different between all of you and nothing.
But the thing for me is that I didn't necessarily express it. So if a friend said, oh, your sister has a disability, oh no, there's something wrong with your sister, I wouldn't say, oh, well, I'm not talking to you again. You can't talk to my sister. No, I just literally would withdraw from you. I would withdraw from you. Yes, I would cry. I'd feel sad because obviously you're a child. You're confused as to why.
So your reactions were very extreme.
Yes, why your friend doesn't want to, hang out with you or play with you or that sort of thing. So it was also a defense mechanism because I was such a timid child. But one of the things that would happen is that I would say to my dad, oh, well, so and so said this about Mickey, and and he would tell me, ignore it. If they're not willing to accept her, then that's their problem. It has nothing to do with you. It's not your fault. That was another thing, I think, because
I think that's really important.
He constantly, reinforced that message that it wasn't my fault. And I think he wanted me to understand that, yes, there are differences, like I said earlier, there are differences between all of you, and all of you are special in your own way. So I understood that there were certain skills that she had that I didn't have. For example, she was very good with her hands and arts and creating different things. So that was also something that he encouraged.
So that's something I actually wanted to, as you were talking, I was thinking about in terms of, so like, what was she doing? What was Mickey doing on like a day-to-day back then? Like, was she attending school?
Yeah, when we lived in Australia, she did actually go to school, and I think that was probably one of the reasons why I perhaps didn't really understand that there was something that was so different. Yes, she went to a different school than I did, but it was school. She was picked up to go to school. We got picked up to go to school. At the end of the day,
she went to school like you.
Yes, you'd see her coming back, and also my interactions with her were very different from when we now moved to Ethiopia. And I think the thing with moving to Africa is that at that time there were a lot, fewer facilities, resources, options. So, like I said, that was when I really realized that, okay, there is a big difference because there was no school for her to go to. So, fortunately enough, there was a center that was run by nuns in Ethiopia. So she went there on a regular basis. It wasn't every day, but it was several times a week. And I found that she actually regressed when they moved here. Yeah. Wow. Interestingly enough.
When you moved to Nigeria?
Yes. So my dad and my stepmom and Mickey and my younger siblings moved here when I was in university in the UK.
Okay.
And when I came here on holiday, I just found she had changed. She was different. So
in what way?
Yes, it was. She was a lot more withdrawn. She became a lot more withdrawn. She became a lot more, I would say, even childlike. So that was definitely, I'm sure it was hard for my father and my stepmom. It was upsetting for me because I was angry that he had moved here. And because we had never lived here, so for me it was, why would you... And obviously this is where we're from, so of course you have to come back here. But I didn't see it that way. And I just kept thinking, well, why can't we just go back to Ethiopia? Why can't you just go back to Ethiopia? Because she was better there.
Yes.
I mean, the difference was
it was glaring. The difference was
much better in Australia.
Much
Ethiopia.
Better. Probably the best. I mean, I was very young and in Australia, but I would say from what I remember, the best while we were in Australia. By the time we had moved to Ethiopia, still okay. She was social, you would hug her and she wouldn't sort of flinch or not necessarily make a lot of eye contact. But by the time they had moved here and then I started, coming here, I realized, I'd be talking to her, or for example, I'd walk into the house and be like, oh, hi, Mickey, and hug her. And she'd look at me and I could see some excitement on her face, but then she'd go off and do whatever it was she was doing.
So I'm glad you said that. When we were talking about Ethiopia, you were talking about your interaction with Mickey.
Yes.
So I wanted to know more about how you interacted with your sister. How did you, because you said she wasn't talking, so how did you understand her? What was your communication like with her?
Well, I love it. We would speak to her as normal, as Najite would speak to me or my brother would speak to me. And if it was that she wanted something that, she would let you know by expressing herself using her hands. I mean, at that point, she was even still using sign language, which I didn't understand fully, but, I was learning some some sign language because she had started learning sign language in Australia. So by the time we had moved to Ethiopia, I knew some sign language. If there was something she wanted, she would let you know. If you did something that she didn't like,
let you know.
She would let you know.
It was literally part of the ecosystem in your house, so it was nothing different. But this is how you communicate,
basically,
and it was just a part of your life.
And she was also a lot happier. You could see it.
Yeah,
you could see it from the way she reacted. Yes, more so, more of a complete person. And as much as we're saying this, I also want to stress that everybody is, you said neurotypical people. All of us go through periods where we're not complete people.
Of course.
We're not. Yeah, I've had several instances in Nigeria where I wasn't 100% a complete person.
Yeah.
So your environment is
very important.
It is a huge factor.
Yes.
And when I tell people that, they're always quite surprised because they think, Ethiopia, it's even more third world than the rest of Africa. And I would always say, actually, no. I think our standard of living was better in Ethiopia than in some ways it has been here. So for her in particular, I feel moving here was an extreme regression for her. Extreme regression. And it's because she's so much older now.
How old is she now?
I was going to ask.
Mickey's in her 50s.
She's in her late 50s. How is it? Where is she?
She's in Abuja. She lives in Abuja with my dad.
Okay.
And she's come to Lagos a few times, and one of the good things about it is, because of Patrick's speech and language center. Fortunately enough, because of my advocacy, I had met Mrs. Dr. Akonde, who runs the center, and I spoke to her about Mickey, and she said, she would love to meet her. And so when we brought Mickey down to Lagos, she met her. So whenever she comes to Lagos, she goes there, and I can see she's happy. I can see the difference. Yes, Mrs. Akonde had assessed and said, unfortunately, because of time and the age, there's very little that can be done for her to have a sort of typical life. But as much as possible, you reinforce that love and care. And when she can come down here with you, please, make sure that she spends time with us. And of course, myself and my siblings have discussed, okay, what do we do? Yeah. But you can't exactly turn around and say to your parent, we are going to take your child from you, because then it's almost as if we're trying to imply that my father did not do a good enough job. And he did. I mean, he raised 4 children by himself, which isn't an easy thing for any parent to do, let alone a man raising,
and he did a good
3
job.
daughters and 1 boy by yourself.
Yeah.
So to then say, okay, well, you've done a great job. We'll take over from here. How do you even...
At the end of the day, that's still his child.
Yeah. This is the first time I'm even talking about it publicly. It's something that,
No,
it's fine.
I feel really kind of privileged and honored that you're sharing this with us, because
it's something that siblings have talked about. Yes, it's something that siblings have talked about. And obviously, as he gets older, it's something we are going to have to cross that bridge when we come to it. And
I mean, these are conversations that we have to have, because and these are things we look at, like Obafe, Kemi, Yemisi, and my children are still fairly young, right?
Yes.
But we think about that dynamic. Especially, I mean, I can speak for myself, and in terms of I look at what happens if I'm not around, what happens if I pass away, who will handle her, what are the things I want done. These are things I've put pen to paper down and have willed.
Good.
Because it's things that are really, really important. I give your dad so much props, because you have to think ahead in that you have to make sure that the environment around that your special child is supportive enough to keep them going after you're not there. But also the balance of that. You don't want to burden your other children. So it's a really fine balance. And if you are blessed with family and siblings that are on the same page, are supportive, it really makes a difference, because your dad is getting older. All our parents, those ones who have not passed, there's a limited time we're on this earth. And these are things we have to discuss and think. And it's not just, let's wait till, later down the line. You have to start thinking about these things now, even with a child who is 5, 4, 7, 8.
Absolutely.
Man, your dad is a king.
No, my dad is a G.
I was going to say something about my dad.
Is a G.
I think we have a lot of women who advocate and a lot of women's voices. But honestly, I think your dad, if he's still able, would be a fantastic. I mean, if we could speak to him somehow, even to be able to speak to him, Zoom or something.
Honestly,
because there are lots of men
because it's always women in the forefront.
And also, you said something for me personally. A man who raised children, right?
Oh, wow, yeah.
A lot of Nigerian men don't hear that part, right?
But they should hear it too.
Let me repeat. They hear it well. And then you said something again. 3 daughters and a boy.
Oh, yeah.
So he had all the complications of girl issues, and then a special needs child who has her own girl issues, which you and I are going to discuss because my brain is already. We are entering, adolescence and. My head is breaking. So it's just, I think the sibling experience, I mean, just hearing you guys talk, I think having a support system, people don't understand how, even with siblings, to not have siblings that you can depend on, to not have siblings who care. We had a really shaky point, and it's just getting back, but that you are the kind of siblings that Mickey needed. You and I, when the first time, and I said God put her where she needed to be.
Yeah.
I never thought about it.
Yeah.
So Michelle, can you tell us a little bit of the advocacy work that you and Najite have been doing for some time?
I guess for me, it actually started because of my dad, to be honest. Because he's always advocated for different causes. And so I grew up watching him do that.
Role models.
Honestly, it's very important.
And so I thought, okay, to all intents and purposes, this man is super busy. Plus you're raising 4 children by yourself. And you're advocating for different causes in different countries we lived in. And I thought, I don't know how he does this, but you learn by example. And so for me, I started advocating for different causes while we lived in Ethiopia. But obviously, because you have a sibling with special needs, I think it was while I was in university and somebody had handed out something at school, in uni, about children with disabilities, and there was one of my classmates that had said, I think it was you or something like that, and I lost it. I lost it. So that was probably one of the first times that I actually was outspoken, and I was having an argument with this person. And by the time I had finished, I really don't remember what I said, but by the time I had finished, I had managed to change their minds because they weren't really aware. And I feel also, it's important because I'm more sensitive to that now, because in each country there are different perceptions to people with disabilities. And interestingly enough, as much as there were resources in Ethiopia, and more so probably than there were at the time here, people in Ethiopia aren't particularly accepting of people with disabilities or special needs. They're not. I really don't remember, I think apart from one Ethiopian family, I don't remember ever meeting any Ethiopian families that had children with special needs. And as I got older, and by the time I started university, I realized that they send most of their children with disabilities away.
To where?
That's the thing I don't know.
Just away.
So maybe to families or relatives in the village, I have no idea. I don't actually remember meeting any Ethiopian families at the time who had any siblings with disabilities or children with disabilities. There were foreign families, yes, there were lots of foreign families that had adopted children with disabilities, but that I actually met an Ethiopian family that I knew from high school that had any kids with disabilities, no. So it started off in university because at that point I was reading up about it and I wanted to know more about it. Just purely because I wanted to understand.
And you wanted to be able to help.
Yes. And so it just sort of spiraled. And from there, I was making donations at that point, would sometimes volunteer. And so by the time I moved here and realized that some of those situations that were in Ethiopia were the also same here, I thought, no, it can't continue like this. So because of what I had started doing for a living, presenting, I thought, well, I'm going to speak about it. Okay. And I'm going to advocate about it. So I contacted different organizations and said, okay, this is what I do for a living. How can I help? Post this on social media. Then it was, Facebook before Instagram, and then Twitter. And I just started doing that. And the more I did it, the more confident, I became as a presenter. I thought, well, I will speak about it.
Use your platform. We noticed.
Yeah. And, when Mrs. Akande, obviously, because she was involved with the GTB, Autism
Week,
Week for quite a while, had asked me to come and speak. I said, sure, why not? And one of the first times I spoke during Autism Week, a lot of parents came up to me at the end and they were like, you're so brave. And I said, how so? That you're speaking about it in public. I said, well, why wouldn't I speak about it in public?
There we go.
And someone, interestingly enough, she had actually been in school with my sister, in university with my sister, and she said, that she wasn't able to speak about it publicly. And she said she remembers when Najite was talking to a group of them, her friends, about my sister, that she was appalled and felt a bit disgusted, only to then get older, get married, and have a child with autism.
There we go. Okay. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing all that you shared with us. And it's very enlightening because we're taking it from a completely different perspective than I'm going to say personally, that I've ever heard from before. But at this moment in time, since we don't have that much time left, we do a thing called the honest truth. Okay. And this is the period of time that, Michelle, you're going to go around and you are going to tell us a truth about your journey, something that you've never shared before.
In relation to my sister?
In relation to your sister,
okay.
Yes.
And you've got 1 minute to do it.
Oh, Lord, you could just give me time to think about that.
Don't think, just say.
Something that
you've never shared. That you've thought about,
said
that you
out loud.
haven't really shared, basically.
That I've never said out loud. Oh, Lord.
No pressure.
This may sound really weird, but there was a time that I actually wished that it was me.
Wow.
I'm not...
Yeah.
And you just wanted to take her pain away.
Yes.
Wow.
And another thing, I know for a fact that she spoke to me. I know for a fact that she spoke to me as an adult, while I was an adult.
Wow.
And I didn't dream it. I didn't imagine it. This was several years ago, and I remember calling my brother up because he's closest to her. When Mickey sees Joe, there's this joy on her face, and she smiles and she's excited, and he hugs her and she hugs him back. And there are very few people that she does that with. Mrs. Akande is actually one of those people.
Oh wow, so special.
So she's very intuitive. It's amazing. And I told him, I said, she spoke to me, and she told me, because I was really depressed. I was really depressed during that time, and I went to Abuja, and I remember crying, and I swear I did not imagine this thing or dream it. She woke up, because I woke up, and she told me it was going to be okay. And I remember the next day, and I said to my dad, Mickey spoke to me. He was like, Michelle, no, you must have been dreaming. I said, I swear she spoke to me.
She spoke. She did speak.
I believe you.
I believe she did.
I believe you. I believe she did.
I'm sorry, I'm not making what I was.
No. Join my club.
This is what we do. Okay,
Yes.
it happens, but most especially, it's like we thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you.
And
thank
sharing
you,
that
thank
with us,
you.
basically, because the little that you think you've done, or the most that you think you've done, you are helping someone's listening, somebody's being encouraged, and the way you said people came up to you and said that you were brave. You are a beacon of hope for a lot of people because you're sharing your experience. And through your experience, other people are learning and other people are gaining their courage to do the things that they may not have been able to do.
Can I say something?
Of course, please.
Whoever's listening, sibling, parent, etc., I think it's very important. And I know that it's hard. I can't say that I fully understand what parents are going through because my situation was obviously very different from my father's or possibly even Najite's. But I think one of the most important things is that you remind your children, and for those who are siblings that are listening, is that you discuss amongst yourselves, and if it's only two of you, that you must learn to be accepting, irrespective of the difficulties that you're going to go through. And there will be quite a few. You must be accepting and find it in your heart to just love unconditionally and treat your sibling as if they are just like you. So special, not awkward, not disabled, just special, just like
special,
you.
not special. They're your
And just be
brother.
accepting. And I think that it's very important how you raise your children. We were raised by somebody who I always give props to my father. He did a great job, and
He did it with intention.
Yes, to be empathetic to other people's needs.
That's very true.
Irrespective of what those needs are. And when you notice that your other child is possibly going through difficult, don't assume, oh, they'll be fine. You know, I'm dealing with my own things.
Yeah.
You must explain to that child.
What's happening.
You must explain to the other child. You must tell that child, here's the thing, you're going to face certain difficulties as you get older, as you make other friends.
Yes.
And not, if your friends are not, accepting of your sibling or don't have anything to do with it, try and speak to them. But if they aren't, it's not a reflection on you.
It's a reflection on them.
Yes. And that was one of the things that he did that really stuck with me.
That is fantastic.
Powerful.
And thank you very much again, Michelle. This has been amazing, to say the least. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up here. Tonya Faluki, thank you very much. Obafe Kemi Luther, thank you very much. And most especially, Michelle.
Our champion.
Dede. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. I know I keep saying that, but it truly, truly, truly has. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. And we do look forward to having you back on our next episode. And so we're signing out. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
And a goodbye and a sayonara from me. All right.
Ciao,
until
ciao,
next
ciao.
time. Thank you very much.
For sponsorship enquiries, please contact specialmomsafrica@gmail.com.